Okay, what we're going to get into today is we're going to get into a safe operation of the table saw. So before we get started, a few rules that we need to get out. Operator must always stay in control of the workpiece. Can never lose control at any point during the process. When you're cutting, in this instance, a board this small, it's under 8 inches. You want to stay to the left of the piece in case of kickback. Less chance of injury. A piece may go by you if it does kick back. Just keeps you in a little safer position. Avoid standing right behind it, because if it does kick back, you're going to get it somewhere in the midsection. Could create a lot of damage. Estimation, piece coming off the saw will be somewhere around 200 kilometers an hour. In a distance of 1 foot, you can't blink fast enough and it's already too late. It's over. You've been hit. So we don't want that to happen to you. They always say to be prepared to shut the saw off if the blade does bind. You may not have time for that, but if you do, definitely shut the saw off. This particular saw doesn't have a splitter or a riving knife on the back of the blade. A riving knife would be a knife that would come up with here and has this type of shape, and it follows the blade. Okay, if not, there's a splitter can be put on the back here. What they're there for is they're there to prevent the piece from coming through the blade on the inside and swinging around the blade. The way the blade's set up now, this can happen, and I'm going to show you a method to get around that and keep yourself safer. In order to do that, make sure your push sticks are close at hand so you don't have to reach anywhere. When you do fire the piece through, okay, what you need to do is you need to take on a small piece like this, you're going to take your forefinger, your index finger, you're going to push it up against the piece. That will keep it up against the fence. And you're going to put your thumb down on top of it. Your thumb is just enough pressure to hold it down so it doesn't come up in the air on you. And just enough pressure that you can actually slide it through. You're going to grab your push stick. You're going to push by hand until it gets onto the table. The reason you do this, if you put a push stick down on it while it's hanging out over the edge, what can happen is the piece can rise up on you and cause injury. So once you're on the actual table like this, push stick. Positioning of the push stick is very important here because there is no riving knife or splitter back here. So what happens is you want to either sit right in the middle of the board, halfway between the fence and the blade, or you want to cheat slightly towards the blade. And I'll do a demonstration out here. So what happens is if I cheat and I come to the right on the piece, you'll see as I push it forward, it will automatically spin. If it does that, it's going to come up the blade and it's going to hit the operator. And what's going to hit the operator, if they're behind it, is this point right here, which will drive your hips back at the same speed as the board's coming at you. Which, unfortunately, natural reaction is for you, if you do get hit, is you throw your hands forward as your hips get shot back. It's a natural reaction. And we only know this because a young fella lost 2 fingers in the shop here on this particular saw because this happened to him. So what happened is basically when the board hit him, it shot the hips back, the hand shot forward and right into the blades and took the fingers across here and just nicked the thumb. So the way to get around that is, like I say, just cheat. If I go right down the center of the board, even in this, I have fairly good control of it. If I'm cheat slightly towards the blade, you'll see that it wants to turn in and keep tight up against the fence. This is one way of keeping yourself safe. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to get set up for our first cut here. We've got a shorter piece, it's under 8 inches, so we're going to actually use a push stick to push it through. First thing we're going to do is we're going to come over to the blade. We're going to lower the blade down to about there. About 1/8 of an inch of the blade should stick up over the board. So what we're going to do is we're going to set it up. I'm going to do a dry run on this. Okay, and what's going to happen is on the back end is I've got a portable stand here, which is basically going to catch the workpiece for me. I'm by myself, so I have to be able to do that for myself. Okay, so we'll do the dry run. We'll go over this again. Basically what I need to do is put my index finger up against the board. That'll keep it up against the fence, and my thumb on top. I want to push the board through my thumb until it's right on the table. Then I will grab my push stick. I will go right in the middle or slightly towards the blade, and I'm going to push it through. As I push it through, pick him off the thing there. I got to get some short one of these. Shoot. It's too long. I need to cut this off. Okay, when you're using a push stick, okay, what you want to make sure that is basically the point of it here does not stick down and push it and force it up in the air like that. So you want to make sure that it's just shy of the thickness of the piece, sort of like that, and that it sits flat. You don't want to be up in the air like this because you can always have it slip out and go past you. So you want to maintain control. Remember that you want to stay in the middle of the board or slightly towards the blade. That should keep it nice and flat. Okay, so now what we're going to do is I'm going to do a dry run with the piece to take you through the steps. Okay, so you use your index finger, you push that keeps it up against the fence, thumbs down with just enough pressure to keep the piece down, and you want to push the piece right onto the table. If you don't, and you put the push stick out at the end, because you will probably raise the front of the board. Then I'm going to put my push stick on, down the center or slightly towards the thing, and I'm going to push right straight through, pull my left hand out of the way, and when I'm past the blade, then I can leave it sit there. If I have somebody operating on the back end there, tailing for me, they can take control of the board at that point. If there's a waste piece that comes off onto this side, okay, I will cut this off and I will remove that. You don't want your helper on the back end to grab onto it, because if it hits the blade, it will come back and it'll hit the operator. That's why the operator always has to stay in control. Okay, now I'm going to take you through an actual cut, show you how the procedure is done. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to show you how to push a piece through using your hand. If the distance between the blade and the fence is 8 inches or more, then you can use your hand. You actually have better control with your hand than you do with a push stick, the wider the pieces get. The way you do that is you take your thumb on the center of the board and you hook your thumb over the end, just like the end of the push stick. And what you do is you sort of twist your hand in to keep it up against the fence. Okay, if you have your thumb hooked, the chances of it coming back on you is much less likely. It'll stop it from coming back, and at least nothing else, it's gonna slow you down for sure. So what we're gonna do is I'll go do a dry run on that. We use the same procedure. Push it, get it onto the table. Once it's onto the table, hook the thumb in, and you torque or twist the hand in. That keeps it up against the fence. Pull your left hand away, and right through. That will make the actual cut. We're gonna go over some of the things that we don't want to see you do on a table saw. Remember that anything that gets caught in a table saw could pull whatever gets caught down into the saw. So you want to get rid of any of your long sleeves. You want to get rid of all of your jewelry. You want to tie your hair back. Anything that can get caught, whether it's lanyards for your keys, any of that stuff could become very dangerous. Rings, watches, hoodie strings. So you wanna make sure all that stuff's tucked away so that you can't get caught in the machines. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go on and we're gonna show you some of the things that definitely you don't wanna do. You never freehand anything on a table saw. So what happens is, this is an actual saw cut here, they call it a kerf, okay? That saw blade should stay straight in that cut. If it doesn't, and you get a little bit sideways on it, what happens is it will bind. If it binds, the saw is gonna throw the piece back at you. That's the operator. You don't really wanna do that to yourself. So never, never, ever freehand anything on here. That's a very dangerous situation. Okay, so on a piece like this here, you'd be in a cross-cutting mode because you're going across the grain. You never ever want to try to push a piece through, because as you do it, what it does is it does one of these. And I talk about the kerf cut and getting sort of sideways in a kerf cut, causing it to bind. It will throw this piece back at you. You have both your hands in a very bad situation, and it'll come back and hit the operator. You can use it on a long one too. Like this here, it's even worse because you got a lot of, and that's what it does. It calls racking. It wants to come in and do this, which will cause it to bind and come back on you. Very dangerous situation. One thing you never want to do when you're working on any woodworking equipment is you never want to cross your hands over. So what happens is I never ever want to do this. Somebody bumps me from behind, or I get myself in trouble, and I'm all tied up and I'm off balance, it could be disastrous. Never, always keep them, if you can, keep them about shoulder width apart if you can. But remember, never to crisscross them. Puts you in a very, very dangerous situation. Okay, so as the person that's on the back end, that we call the tailing person, okay, they're gonna be receiving the piece. They wanna make sure that they basically don't touch the piece or take control of it till it's past the blade and the operator's ready for them to take it out of their hands. What you need to do as the operator too is you need to keep the piece flat. So basically you don't want it to pick up on it, and you don't want to basically push down on it, because that could be dangerous for the operator. And remember, it's the operator that's going to get hit if anything happens. So make sure that it's past the blade. Make sure that you just tuck your hands up underneath, just so you support the weight of it, and you keep it flat on the table. One thing you don't want to do is you don't want to clamp onto it and pull on it. When people pull on it, they have a tendency of pulling it off the fence. And basically, a lot of times, especially with no riving knife, it could wrap around the blade and come back and hit the operator, or it will cut a bit of a curve on the piece. Okay, so we're going to do a demonstration on that. So myself as the person that's tailing or catching, I want to just keep it level, and I do not want to grab onto it. Once the operator gets past, then I can take the piece and slide it straight back.